Welcome to another episode of the Muscle for Life podcast. I'm Mike, and in this episode, we're going to talk about muscle building supplements. I've been doing this little series on supplements, and muscle building supplements need to be in it because fat loss supplements and protein powders are probably they probably account for the majority of the money spent in the supplement space, but muscle building supplements are a close third. And specifically, we're going to talk about three of the more popular muscle building supplements, kind of air quotes, muscle building supplements that don't work. And those are testosterone boosters, BCAAs, and HMB. A lot of people buy these products. They're heavily promoted as helping with building muscle. And then we'll talk about three of the muscle building supplements that do work and that I do recommend that you take and use if your budget supports it. And if you want to take supplements, and those are whey protein, creatine, and beta alanine. And along the way, we'll talk about a few others like glutamine. A lot of people think glutamine helps build muscle. It doesn't, and so forth. So let's just dive in. Many years ago, before I was, doing this and had my own supplement line and blah, blah, blah. I was like most people in that I would spend a lot of money on supplements. I would probably spend, there was a time when I was spending like $300 or $400 a month on supplements, which is pretty, which is a lot of money, and especially a lot of money considering that I wasn't getting really anything for it. I was just, most of it was on, I tried random different testosterone boosters and growth hormone boosters and muscle building stuff, not so much on fat loss. And then I'd buy protein powder and I'd try pre-workouts. But, some of these muscle builders that are in the, back area in the under lock and key, pretty expensive. You could spend $60, $70, $80 on a single bottle. I never really noticed a difference. There were probably a couple, I can remember a couple products where I actually felt the difference, which now that I know what I know about the supplement space, makes me wonder what was in it. Like there was a product called Pink Magic. It was made by USP Labs, who now I would never ever buy anything from USP Labs just because of the scandals that they've run into with Jacked or Jack 3D, or obviously it's Jacked is how they want it pronounced. But a lot of people say Jack 3D, so you know what I'm talking about. And which had, there was the DMAA problem there, and then on Oxy Elite Pro, there was the liver failure problem, and then there was Prozac in it as well. So do not trust this company. Who knows what they put in their stuff. But they had a product called Pink Magic that was supposed to be a testosterone booster. And I remember noticing a difference, like feeling a bit more energetic and a bit more sex drive and feeling a bit stronger in the gym for like the first bottle that I had taken, and then I had gotten another one later and then didn't notice anything. So, I don't know. It's very possible that what some companies do is they may release a product that has some sort of chemical in it that obviously they're not promoting that's in it, as it could be a drug, it could be something, and then they use that initial run. So let's say they run, 50,000 bottles or something that is spiked with something that you will actually feel that actually works. And then they get it out there, and that generates word of mouth because the similar to the book space, the supplement space is very much driven by word of mouth. A lot people that are into working out, they generally are into working out with other people, and they get to know people in the gym, and people are talking about, what supplements they've tried, and it's kind of good water cooler conversation. Oh, hey, so did you try this new pre-workout? Did you try this new blah? So you get 50,000 bottles out there that are spiked with, in this case, something, I don't know. I don't know. There was never any scandals that came out regarding Pink Magic. So it could have just been straight placebo, which is also something that supplement companies count on, is just that your belief that it's going to work can very well make it work. So, I thought at that time that I was a bit naive in that I thought supplement companies were, I didn't take all their marketing at face value, but I thought that they were generally like professional companies that, were on kind of, at least some of them were on the cutting edge of research, and they really were trying to make good products. I didn't really realize it's just a dog and pony show, and they're really primarily just marketing companies that sell trash products. That's more or less supplement companies. So I didn't know that at the time. If there was this new testosterone booster based on this new research and it has this new herb and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. Sounds interesting. Sure. I'll try it with the belief that maybe it works. They say it works, and maybe I heard from someone in the gym that it works. So you get those bottles out there. Spiked, and then generates a lot of word of mouth where people say, hey, did you try that new pink magic or whatever? Your next runs don't contain the molecule or the drug or whatever it is. And because then you can't get caught. So, if the only way you can get caught is from a bottle from a batch that was run, who knows? I mean, it could be by the time you get caught, it could have been, that was a year and a half ago or something like that. But so you spike your first batch, get word of mouth going, and then your batches going forward are clean. And of course they don't have the same results, but it doesn't matter because, that initial impetus could sell you another, who knows, 200,000 bottles or something like that. If you have big, when we're talking about a big company with distribution into all supplement stores and online and everywhere. So that's a formula, and I don't know if that's what USP Labs is doing or has done. I mean, obviously, you can look up the scandals I was talking about previously are just public knowledge now, so you can just look that up online. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what they were doing, just because. I mean, I guess it makes sense from a marketing standpoint. It doesn't make sense from being a good human standpoint. But again, I don't know. Maybe not. But so my point is, I would try a lot of these random products that are supposed to increase testosterone or increase this hormone or decrease estrogen or whatever. And for the most part, never really noticed a difference. And now I know why. And that's really just because the vast majority, I mean, this is one of the key takeaways of this podcast is the vast majority of muscle building supplements are just worthless. There are a few that can help, and yes, they can help, and we know that scientifically. They are not anything like steroids. They're not going to dramatically, change your results. But when you are, and I've said this before, that when you're a natural weightlifter, you want to build muscle naturally. There are a lot of little things that you can do that by themselves don't do much, but cumulatively actually do something. And that applies to fat loss too, so if you take, an individual supplement, or if you take an individual molecule like caffeine, for instance, it increases your basal metabolic rate by a certain amount, depending on your sensitivity to it and depending on how often you take it and how much and blah, blah, blah. But, just by itself, caffeine, you can't say caffeine is a great weight loss drug or weight loss supplement or weight loss molecule, because it doesn't burn enough energy just by itself to make that big of a difference. But when you start combining it, so if you have caffeine and then you have synephrine, and then if you combine those with a couple other molecules that are found in the bitter orange like naringin, hesperidin, and then you combine that with green tea extract, all of these things, they give, they help you burn a little bit more fat, or burn a little bit more energy and thereby burn more fat. Yohimbine is another good example. So you add all those things together, which you can do safely if you just have your dosages right. And now all of a sudden you're losing fat, maybe 30 to 50% faster. So if you hadn't taken any supplements, let's say you could lose a pound a week, and then, you add all these supplements in, and now you're losing a pound and a half a week. And you're losing it safely, and there are no, negative side effects. There's no reason not to do it. It just costs a little bit of money. If you don't mind that, then, that matters. So that applies to muscle building supplements as well, where, creatine, for instance, I'd say creatine by itself I think it makes enough of a difference that it really is just worth taking if that's the only supplement that you actually were taking. Let's say a protein powder can be convenient, but let's say you don't even need that. You just eat your protein. If you're into weightlifting, you should be taking creatine. If you have kidney disease, probably not. You should check with your doctor. But if you're healthy, you should be taking creatine. But beta alanine is an example of it does seem to increase muscle gain over time, independently of increasing workout performance. But by itself, those effects they're not nothing. They're just minor. It's not steroids. But if you're combining beta alanine with creatine, then you're adding a little bit more to it. And unfortunately, you don't have as many options with muscle building supplements as you do with fat loss. So there's no way that you are going to take enough muscle building supplements to build muscle 50% faster. That's just not going to happen. So, if naturally, let's say you could gain let's say 20 pounds of muscle in your first year of weightlifting, there's no way that supplements are going to get you to 30 pounds. I mean, based on all the research and all the study I've done, I wouldn't say that. I would say 25 pounds, maybe you could probably get an extra 3 to 5 pounds with the right supplements if you are doing everything else right, if you're eating right and training right. And even that might be a little bit high, might be closer to, maybe I would say probably 10 to 20% is what you can get with natural supplements. So if that's not all that exciting to you, I understand, but that just is what it is. So at least if you can go into, if you're taking creatine or you're considering taking creatine or other muscle building supplements that we're going to talk about, you can go into it with realistic expectations, and where you're not hinging your whole future of your training, or you're not your whether you're going to continue or not doesn't hinge on, if I can just add in this creatine and finally, I want to gain an extra 5 pounds in the next 2 months of muscle, you know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. But if you have realistic expectations and you're okay with that, and you're thinking with over the next, year or two, you could see an increase of, let's say 10, 20% by doing what I'm going to talk about in this podcast, then that's the right frame of mind to approach it from. So let's talk about bad or worthless muscle builders. And the first are natural testosterone boosters. There's just so much wrong with these supplements, and they're very popular right now because you can find I've seen a couple studies that show that here in the West and in the US in particular, the testosterone levels are declining in men, and this has a lot of guys worried. And TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, is very popular right now, and it's very promoted. And if you're getting on testosterone, if you're on TRT, that will make a difference. You are going to feel different. You're going to have more energy. You are going to have more sex drive. Depending on what your dosages are, you are going to be stronger in the gym. If you're going very high, like top end of normal, then you will build muscle noticeably faster and get stronger noticeably faster. So, there's an instant gratification to it. It's just, hey, inject yourself depending on what you're doing. It could be, actually, I don't know on standard TRT what type of testosterone is it. Is it a once a week injection, or are you doing it more frequently? But regardless, hey, all you got to do is inject this stuff and you're going to feel better immediately. So, testosterone is on a lot of guys' minds these days. And a lot of people, though, they don't want to turn to drugs because of potential health implications and psychological addiction, risks and blah, blah, blah. So they go, I'll just turn to natural. What can I do naturally? And unfortunately, the only things that you can do naturally to increase your testosterone that actually would work are more lifestyle oriented, and they are longer term solutions. There are no pills or powders you can take that can make up for bad lifestyle choices that lower testosterone levels, which if you want to learn more about that, go over to legionathletics.com, go to the blog and search for testosterone. And I have a pretty long article that I wrote on it that goes over what does and doesn't work in terms of increasing testosterone naturally. And also might ease your mind a bit if all you're thinking about is muscle building and building a physique. Just a segue from talking about testosterone booster supplements in general, is that even if they did work, and it's not going to make a difference, because for you to really notice a difference in terms of muscle gain and strength, you're going to need to dramatically increase your testosterone. You can't just increase it by 10, 15%. You might feel that. You might feel a little bit better. You might, have a little bit more sex drive, but you're really not going to notice much in the gym in terms of strength or muscle endurance, if anything, and you're really not going to notice anything in terms of muscle gain. So, what a testosterone booster would have to do is you'd have to, let's say, double or triple your testosterone levels, not increase it by 20, 25%, which even that would be that would be a, over the top marketing claim to say that, you could take this herb and increase your testosterone by, 25%. They would not be supported by scientific research. I can guarantee you that. But for such a product to deliver on how the type of claims that are normally made to sell it, which is build muscle faster, get shredded, blah, blah, blah. It would have to double or triple your testosterone levels. And I guarantee you there is no way to do that naturally unless, you could do that through lifestyle changes if your lifestyle is really upside down. Like if you have chronically high cortisol levels, so let's say you don't sleep enough, chronically, you're an insomniac and you're deficient in various vitamins and minerals. You're deficient in like vitamin D and zinc. Even a vitamin C deficiency can affect testosterone levels, magnesium as well. And you're doing a ton of cardio and you're doing very little or no weightlifting. There are a lot of things you could do. Your low carb dieting can lower testosterone levels because it can raise cortisol levels, and there's an inverse relationship there. As cortisol levels go up, it depresses testosterone levels. So yeah, if you took someone in an extreme situation and you fixed all of that, it could, because let's say that they could be at really, they could be bottomed out. Let's say a guy was at 200 NGDL, nanograms per deciliter of testosterone. It's how it's one of the ways it can be measured. And whereas let's say normal would be around 600. So because of a just terrible lifestyle, drink a lot of alcohol, blah, blah, blah. So he's down in the 150 to 200 range, and also let's say overweight too, just everything you can do to lower your testosterone levels, and then fix all of that, completely change, transform himself. Yes. Then he can come back up to where his body would normally be if he weren't doing all that stuff. Let's say that's 600. And that person is going to notice a difference in the gym. It may not be as dramatic as you would think, but they will notice a difference in everything. But if you take someone who is, let's say, has all that stuff in, lives healthy, takes care of their body, isn't doing anything that is really depressing his testosterone, there's just no way to double or triple without exogenous, without injecting testosterone or pill or what is it? Yeah, I think they do like not pill, pellet or creams or whatever. You have to introduce it into the body externally. There's just nothing you can do to take someone that has normal testosterone and double or triple it. And just to touch on a few ingredients, if you look at testosterone boosters, you'll see that many contain tribulus terrestris, and some of them call that out as if that's and that's why you should buy this product, because it has tribulus. And several studies have shown that it does not work. This isn't even one of those, because some ingredients will have a rat study that increased testosterone in rats, and then they'll say, oh, see, it increases testosterone, you should take it. Well, we're not big rats. We're not big mice. There are big differences in terms of how our bodies work, especially with metabolism. When there are diet studies done with rats, and certain types of rats can gain fat a lot faster than humans, and so this is a case though where there's human research on tribulus terrestris that shows it does not work. It doesn't improve testosterone levels. It doesn't improve body composition. It doesn't improve exercise performance. It's worthless if as a fitness person and trying to build a physique, it's worthless. ZMA, zinc, magnesium, and normally vitamin B6 as well, I believe, is another example of a supplement that if you're deficient in zinc or magnesium, then that can depress testosterone levels. So fixing that can increase them. Same thing, I think I mentioned this, but if I didn't, vitamin D, it's very important for many, many reasons that you have enough vitamin D, but testosterone, there's a connection there between vitamin D levels and testosterone levels. So ZMA, and there's human research that shows that if you are not deficient in zinc or magnesium, taking ZMA is not going to increase your testosterone levels. But that's not how most supplement companies, if they sell a ZMA product, it's probably to promote, it's either going to be promote increased testosterone or better sleep. And I believe there's some research on magnesium helping improve sleep quality. So I'd have to look on that. I'm not sure. I feel like I've seen that, but I can tell you for sure that if you are not deficient in zinc or magnesium, it's not going to increase your testosterone levels. And that's also why I kind of have an issue with the even the title of a hormone booster, of a testosterone booster. Because I've looked at for Legion, for my supplement company, I would from a financial standpoint, I think I would love to have something that it would be a hormone type supplement for men. And the reason why I don't is because of what I'm talking about in this podcast. There's just no way. I haven't found any formulation. I haven't been able to, and I work with, two very smart people as well, much smarter than I am, much more educated than I am, especially in this field, with science degrees and blah, blah, blah. And we just haven't come across anything that we would be able to sell with any enthusiasm. It would just be like, well, if you're deficient in these couple things, it could help. But then again, you could just take my multivitamin, which has all these things as well. So why would you even want to take this? Because the multivitamin has a bunch of other good stuff as well. So, it's just, and selling something as a hormone booster is kind of misleading, because it's the best you could hope for really is you could say hormone optimizer, or because it would be if you're deficient, or if you have a situation where your hormone levels, your testosterone levels are being depressed, this could help you. But that's not, even from a marketing standpoint, that's not, you're up against products that say, 33% increase in testosterone. And so, what's somebody going to choose when they're looking at, well, this one, kind of says that it doesn't really even increase testosterone if I'm not deficient in certain vitamins and minerals. And the best I can really hope for is a small increase, maybe temporary. So that would be like the honest sales pitch versus, oh, well, this, look at all the pictures of these shredded dudes and these girls hanging all over them, and and bigger muscles and better sex and better abs. Yeah, I want all that. I'll just buy that one. So if in the future, if there's more research and that there are certain supplements that we're keeping an eye on that are showing some promise, but it's preliminary research. It's not research that we would be comfortable building a product around. So we'll see where that goes. But that's also why, if you see a product that is really selling itself as a testosterone booster, it's going to increase your testosterone by so much, just skip it. I'll have people that'll email me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Because you'll have some of these, I guess you'd call them advertorials, but they're on the internet, where it looks like it's some news website or some fitness magazine type of article or website, and it's really just to get you to buy a product. And usually it's the shady rebill stuff. It's like the free bottle, the free trial. If you ever come across those types of things, I don't care where they're promoted. I don't care if it's men's health promoting, or GNC's Force Factor or whatever. Just skip it. So here's how Zac Efron got so jacked and shredded for his new movie, or Chris Pratt for whatever movie or whatever, and this is the product and it has all the pictures. So just skip those. They're all trash. They are going to do nothing, I guarantee you. So D-aspartic acid is another ingredient that you'll find in a lot of testosterone boosters, and the love affair with D-aspartic acid in the supplement industry kind of started, I want to say about 6 or 7 years ago. There was some research that showed that it could increase testosterone levels in both humans and rats. And then, of course, supplement companies jumped onto it, and that became the thing. I took D-aspartic acid back in the day because I had heard about it, and this is before I was, educated. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it, I guess. And I noticed that, funny enough, because now we know more about it, because there's more research that has been done on it. And what it boils down to is, it looks like in some people it can cause a temporary mild increase in testosterone levels. It works. It seems to work in some people. It seems to not really work in other people. Its effects are mild and they don't last very long, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, which is, interestingly enough, I noticed when I first started taking D-aspartic acid, it wasn't a huge difference, but I noticed I was sleeping a little bit better and I had a little bit more energy, a little bit more sex drive, and it lasted for a few weeks and then it went away. And then anytime in the future that I tried it again, same product, it just did nothing. And that's in line with now what we know, we know a bit more, because there have been more studies since that initial, it's like a 2009 study that came out that kind of kicked off the D-aspartic acid market, at least in the fitness space. And now we know more, and that's basically what we know at this point. So when you see, products that are pushing those ingredients, tribulus terrestris, ZMA, and DAA, just know that you're not going to get anything out of it. And if you are deficient in zinc and magnesium, or other, even vitamin D or other things like that, in my opinion, a well-formulated multivitamin is a better choice because you'll get more for your money, really. I mean, you're going to pay, let's say $40 for a bottle of a hormone optimizer or testosterone optimizer or booster or whatever, and you're going to get, a few. Let's say that what actually helps your body is the zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D that's in there, and then you have a bunch of these other worthless ingredients that you're paying money for. You might as well just get a good multivitamin that has the zinc and the magnesium and vitamin D, plus a bunch of other stuff that's actually good, that's actually going to benefit you. And the same thing goes for ingredients like saw palmetto. You'll see that in a lot of products and just sold by itself and promoted heavily. Horny goatweed, uricoma, longifolia jack is another one, holy basil, velvet antler. So you have a lot of these testosterone boosting type of ingredients that, again, are just they've either been proven to not work, or there's just not sufficient evidence that they do work. And that could be because there's just preliminary research, or it's rat research, or whatever. If you want to dive into this deeper, I would suggest going to examine.com and searching for testosterone booster, or just Google examine testosterone booster, and you'll see that a pretty extensive collection of the ingredients that you'll find in testosterone boosting supplements. And if you're not familiar with Examine, I don't even know how many studies. They probably have hundreds of thousands of studies cited now. It's all about the science of supplements, and they have a lot of very smart people and very educated people producing their content and doing their research, and it's just a great place to go. It's written for scientists. I'll warn you, it's not written for laymen. Some of the product pages or some of the supplement pages have editor's notes that kind of explain certain things, that break things down and make it simple, but it's very technical, it's very dense, but there is enough. You can sort through it enough where, if you want to know what are the testosterone boosting effects of blah, you go to that page and they'll have a section on testosterone boosting. There'll be a lot of words that you don't know and a lot of things that you're like, I have no idea what they're saying, but you'll come to a point where you'll see, oh, okay, so in this study, did it work or not? Yes or no? You can get answers to that. So I would recommend checking that out. It's just a good resource. If you want to also fact check anything I say or anything anybody says, Examine's a good resource for that. All right, so now let's talk BCAAs. Very popular supplement, a supplement that I get asked fairly frequently why I don't have one. And the reason why is because if you eat enough protein and you don't train fasted, which means that you don't train when your insulin levels are at a low baseline level because you haven't eaten food in, let's say, it really depends how big your previous meal was, but it could be anywhere from 3 to 6 hours. So you eat food, your body processes it. Insulin plays a role in processing the food that you eat. Once it's done processing, insulin levels come down. You're now in a fasted state. So if you don't train in a fasted state, and if you eat enough protein, there's just really nothing that BCAAs can offer you. And if they're going to do anything, it's going to be so negligible. It's just not even worth the money. And if you're not familiar with BCAAs, it's branched chain amino acids. It's 3 amino acids: leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And out of those 3, leucine for muscle building purposes is the most important because it stimulates muscle growth. Is just a simple way to think about it on a cellular level. So that's one of the reasons why whey protein is a great source of protein, is because it's very high in leucine, which makes it good for muscle building purposes, I guess you could say. And whereas proteins that would be very low in leucine wouldn't stimulate as much protein synthesis so like 20 grams of whey would stimulate in an immediate sense more protein synthesis than 20 grams of a protein that would be much lower in leucine, which could be, a protein. There would be a plant-based protein, for instance. Nothing immediately comes to mind, but let's say protein you'd find in something like broccoli. Broccoli, when compared to whey, has a lot less leucine. Isoleucine has similar effects to leucine. They're just not nearly as significant. And valine, for muscle building purposes, really has no role in things. It doesn't seem to do much of anything. Now, the reason why BCAAs are just very popular is because they're easy to sell. You can cite research that shows, these people took BCAAs before their workouts or during their workouts or throughout the day or whatever, and they gained more muscle than these people. And it's clean, it's simple, and it's convincing. But in some cases, I feel the research is just biased. When it's funded by the company that is known for their BCAA product, that's all what they push is their BCAA product. That's their best selling product. Yeah, that's an obvious conflict of interest. In some cases, this comes back to the faster training point of where if you are, let's say you train first thing in the morning, so you stop eating at 10 p.m. at the previous night, and then you go to bed at whatever 11 or 12, and then you're up at 7, let's say. So you haven't eaten in quite some time. Obviously, you're in a fasted state, and then you go lift weights, and then you eat after. In that case, if you were to take BCAAs before you go train, over time, there is a good chance that you're going to gain more muscle. And the reason why is when you are training in a fasted state, muscle breakdown is accelerated. So when you're training, you're obviously causing the breakdown of muscle cells. You're damaging muscle cells, and some of it, like to a point, that's good. That's what we want. That's one of the, you could say, pathways to muscle growth. It's one of the stimuli that causes the body to adapt and build muscles bigger and stronger. But too much muscle breakdown is a problem, because at the end of the day, muscle gain is simply the difference between how much, we could say, how many muscle proteins were synthesized, were created, versus how many were broken down or lost. So if you can do anything you can do to increase protein synthesis, that's one of the major things that steroids do, is they just greatly elevate protein synthesis. So your body's able to synthesize many more muscle proteins every day than normal. So doing that increases, total muscle gain, or decreasing muscle breakdown increases total muscle gain. That's one of the reasons why high carb dieting can help you gain muscle faster. There are several reasons, but one of them is if you have a high carb diet, generally your insulin levels are just generally higher. And insulin isn't an anabolic hormone, but it's an anti-catabolic hormone, meaning that it lowers muscle breakdown levels. And this has been proven in many studies, and I've written about it many times. So that high carb diet, what it's doing is if you look at it in terms of total muscle breakdown rates in a 24-hour period, it is lowering them, because that's one of the effects of insulin in the body. So when you're training in a fasted state, you are losing more muscle cells, you could think of it, or they're getting damaged, they need to be replaced. And by having leucine in particular, about 3 grams or so, before training, what leucine does then is, because it stimulates protein synthesis, it counterbalances the acceleration in muscle breakdown that occurs while you train fasted. And leucine does have an insulin response. It does stimulate the production of insulin, but doesn't cause the production of nearly as much as food, as a meal. And so in terms of an acute spike, and then your levels don't remain elevated for nearly as long. So that's where BCAAs can come in, and where having 10 grams of BCAAs will generally provide you with 2 or 3 grams of leucine before fasted training. That can help you gain muscle faster over time, and it'll probably also improve your performance a little bit as well. Now, those effects are minimal. Those are, like, going back to the beginning of the podcast, one of the just little things, a little tweak you can give you a little bit of oomph, a couple more percent, and you add it to your routine kind of thing. It's not a huge make break, but I do all my training fasted these days, just because I've come to enjoy it, really. So if I'm not cutting, then I don't do BCAAs. I just do straight leucine. I just do 3 grams of leucine. It doesn't taste good, but at this point I don't care. Mix it with water, drink it down. You can mix it with pre-workout too, but it makes your pre-workout taste quite a bit worse. So I kind of like the taste of my pre-workout, so I just kind of get my leucine down and be like, ugh, and then wash my mouth out, and then actually enjoy my pre-workout. If you are training fasted, I would say just buy leucine. You're going to save money, because the other 2 amino acids aren't going to do anything. And if you are not training fasted, then you most definitely don't need to be taking it before you train, or during, or after. And if you are eating enough protein, then it has no use either. And if you're not eating enough protein, you can't replace the protein that you should be eating with BCAAs, because protein contains quite a few more amino acids that your body needs to do everything that it does, including building muscle. It's not just 3 amino acids that you get from protein. And the last the muscle building supplement that sucks, is HMB, or beta hydroxy beta methylbutyrate. And this is a metabolite, would be the word. It's a molecule that when it metabolizes and it breaks down leucine, one of the molecules that comes out of this, or that results from that process, is HMB. And this has been sold for several years now as a very potent muscle builder. There have been a couple studies that demonstrate outrageous results. I mean, results that you couldn't even get with steroids, where you have like, experienced resistance trained men lifting weights for 10 weeks with HMB, and the HMB group gained X, I don't remember the exact numbers, but a large amount of muscle and lost a large amount of fat. And that's it. That was the only difference, and diets were matched and training was matched and blah, blah, blah. And that's just nonsense. Again, if you look at who funded that research, it's the person that owns the patent on HMB, so no surprise. And if you look at, there are several studies that don't have these biases or these conflicts of interest and show that it basically had no effects on strength. I think there was one that showed a slight boost in strength, but there are several others that the general consensus is HMB doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't help you build muscle faster. It just doesn't work like that. That said, one of my supplements contains HMB. It's called Forge, and the reason why is because Forge it's kind of a unique product in that it is specifically for fasted training, because it has HMB and it has yohimbine and it has another molecule called CDP choline or citicoline. And the reason why is because research shows that while HMB isn't anabolic, kind of similar to insulin, like I was talking about earlier. It's not anabolic, but it's very anti-catabolic, which is what we want from the leucine, that I take before I train fasted. It's anti-catabolic. That's why I'm taking it. It helps reduce muscle breakdown rates. And research shows that HMB is about 20 times as anti-catabolic, and it has no insulin response whatsoever. So for the purpose of mitigating the downsides of fasted training, HMB is great. And the reason why that I take leucine before I train fasted on HMB is because I don't need to be taking yohimbine in particular, every day. If I'm not cutting right now, I'm just maintaining. So there's no reason to take yohimbine every day. I only take it when I'm cutting. So I could buy HMB as a separate supplement, but it's very expensive. It's because it's overhyped and overmarketed. So leucine works fine. HMB is better, but leucine works fine, and it's cheap. So I just use that. All right. So those are the 3 most popular types of muscle building supplements, at least right now, that you shouldn't waste your money on. I mentioned glutamine earlier. Glutamine, I feel like the hype on that has finally died down. Like many years ago, when I was wasting a bunch of money on supplements, on worthless supplements, that's when glutamine is really being pushed as like this is powerful, particularly for muscle, for like post-workout. Like if you take this post-workout, your muscles are going to recover faster and you're going to build more muscle. And we know now that's 100% false. That is not true. There's now research, again, similar to tribulus terrestris. There's human research that shows this does not work. It's not just, hey, there's no evidence for this and theoretically it shouldn't work. We know it does not work. Glutamine is good for your immune system. It's good for your gut health. You could take it for that reason. And also, if I remember correctly, there was one study I saw with college football players that were training several hours a day between their workouts and between their practices and stuff. There was several hours of intense exercise per day. And with those guys, glutamine helped with recovery. So if that's you, if you're doing 4 to 6 hours of intense exercise a day, glutamine may help you recover faster. There may have been some performance benefits as well. I don't remember, but that's just not the majority of us. So I don't take glutamine, but if I were getting sick frequently, or if I were having gut issues, then depending on what they were, then it might make sense for me to take it, but that's just not the case for me. So I just don't bother with it. Okay, so now let's talk about good supplements. Let's talk about the 3 ones that I personally use and recommend. And the first is protein powder. I personally use Whey isolate because it has great macros. It's basically just protein. I sell a Whey isolate, and it's, if I remember correctly, it's somewhere around, I think it's like 22 or 24 grams of protein per scoop, and either 0 or anywhere from like 1 to a few carbs, because certain flavor systems actually you need 2 grams of carbs in the vanilla to make it taste right, but you only need 1 gram of carb in the chocolate or whatever. And, 0.5 to like 1, maybe we have 2 grams of fat per serving. I don't think it goes up to, I think it's like basically no fat. So the macros are great, the calories are great, and it tastes super good. Also, I like that it has no lactose in it. I'm not lactose intolerant, but there is a point where if I have too much lactose, which I have 3 scoops of protein a day, and also I have some Greek yogurt at night, sometimes some cottage cheese as well. And also these days, some Parmesan cheese I put on my food, or I just eat a little bit because it's super tasty. If I have too much lactose, it can upset my stomach. So if I can just reduce the lactose load, and then I do that, and Whey isolate is good for that. Now you don't need a protein supplement. You can just eat all of your protein, but that can be tricky because balancing your macros can be tricky depending on how much time you have to cook and what your palate's like. Like how many foods do you like? What are you willing to eat? What are you willing to make? Then there's time that goes with that. You have to shop, you have to prep, you have to cook, clean up, and so forth. You're gonna probably have to bring foods with you if you have you need to eat some protein. It's generally a good idea to have protein probably every 3 or 5 hours. There is some research that shows that that will probably help you build muscle faster over the long term than if you just ate protein once or twice a day with many hours in between those meals. Also, I like to eat every few hours, just have something, get a little boost in energy and taste something good. So, if you were going to have a 3 p.m. snack of some kind, if it's going to be protein, and you want to just eat food, you're going to have to be carrying meals with you, and maybe you're going to need, like a 6-pack bags type thing or meal prep, meal container type of approach. That's fine if you want to do that. But personally, I would rather just throw some protein in a shaker and just drink it down. And then there's also, depending on how much food you need to eat. If you're bulking and you're increasing your calories over time, you get pretty sick of eating. That's one of the ways you're doing it right when you're bulking. If you are sick of eating after being a month or 2 into a bulk, you're doing it right. And same thing with cutting. Like after a month or so of cutting, if maybe you're not super hungry all the time, but you could really use some more food. It's a sign you're probably doing it right. But so when you're just trying to get all your protein from whole foods, especially when you're bulking, it just sometimes a shake is just a nice reprieve from feeling full all the time, as opposed to eating a chicken breast maybe that would be much more filling. So the pros of protein powder are obvious. They make fast and easy snacks. It's often preferable to having to eat food. The macros, depending on the product, can be very good, which means that you get to spend your calories and your macros on, you're not drinking carbs and fats, which I never like to do. I want to eat my carbs and fats, and I'll drink protein. I want to eat my carbs and fats though. And protein powder also is very affordable. It can be depending on what you're buying, but when you look at it in terms of what you're paying per gram of protein, especially high quality protein, a lot of people think that supplements, they just see a price tag and they go, that's expensive. But then go look at what you're paying per gram of protein, for that whey or whatever, versus something else that you would buy, whether it be chicken or a meat of some kind, or dairy or eggs or whatever. And you'll see that it can be a good value actually. So in the case of whey, I should also mention that there is a bit of research that shows that because whey is rapidly digested and it's very high in leucine, that it makes a particularly good post-workout protein, something to have. It's not so much about the anabolic window per se, but it's probably a good idea to eat protein within 30 minutes, 60 minutes or so. Have a serving of protein, 20 to 40 grams after you train. Over time, it probably gives you a little boost to muscle gain over time. And there's some research that shows that whey is particularly good for that. So that's really, I have 2 scoops of protein. I train early in the morning. I come here to the office. I have 2 scoops of whey protein then, and I have a scoop in the afternoon. Just because it tastes good, and I do try to eat protein every few hours or so. I'm not like crazy about it. If I miss a meal or something, I'm not worried about it, but that's generally what I try to do. So that is the post-workout aspect is a reason, I think, to if you don't have any problem with whey or whey isolate, that it makes sense to get a whey, because you can now you gain a little bit in your post-workout use, and then if you take 1 or 2 scoops at another time in the day, it's going to be equally as good as anything else. Sometimes I'll get asked by people, they'll say, oh, well, isn't it better to have a slow burning protein throughout? If you had 6 servings of protein a day, isn't there research that shows that slower burning proteins proteins are going to help you gain muscle faster. And there is some research on that. There's not much, and it's not enough where I'm willing to, let's say, sell a casein protein and sell it on that and say, hey, this is a better muscle builder protein, like some companies do. But what sometimes people forget is, but you're not taking 6 servings of protein powder a day. Or if you are, you need to rethink your diet. I don't know of any off the top, like just simple here's the study that shows that you should be getting, that says this is how much protein powder you should be having per day. But I think it's pretty sensible to say that you shouldn't be getting the majority of your daily protein from a powder, mainly because there are other nutrients that you should be getting. You have different sources of protein where you can get protein. It can be meat sources, animal sources, which have different nutrients your body needs. There can be plant sources, which have a lot of nutrients that your body needs. So it's not just about, when you eat food, it's not just a macro. It's not just, I'm getting protein, carbs, and fats. You're getting macros and micros. So there are a lot of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and other things that you're not going to get from just a protein powder. So that's why I personally, again, I have about 70 grams of protein. I eat about 200 grams of protein a day. That's my, average intake. Sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. And I get 70 of those grams from protein powder and everything else from food. And I get a variety of, my protein comes from, I eat chicken, I have some dairy, outside I have Greek yogurt. I have 1 egg every day. I get protein a little bit from vegetables that I eat. It's not much, maybe 10 or 15 grams. And then I get I eat oatmeal every day. So I get my protein from a variety of sources, which then also comes with other nutrients that the body needs. So, when people ask me how much of my daily protein can come from powder, I say definitely don't go higher than 50%. But if you can get a little bit under that and get your protein from a variety of foods, of nutritious foods, then that's probably the best choice. So that's why I say, if you're fine with whey, just go with a whey, because you're not going to be having 7 servings of whey, 7 servings of a powder every day. If you were going to do 7 servings of a powder, maybe then a slower burning protein would be a better idea, but I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. So next on the list is creatine, and creatine is, there are hundreds and hundreds of studies that have been done on creatine over the last several decades. It's the most researched molecule in all of sports nutrition, and it works. We know that for a fact. You build muscle faster, you get stronger faster, it improves anaerobic endurance, it improves muscle recovery. There's just no question it works. It's not a steroid, it's not going to be as effective as doing injecting a large amount of testosterone, obviously, every week. But if you are, and I said this earlier, if you are a healthy individual, you don't have kidney disease or anything like that, and you are trying to build muscle or build strength, build physique or whatever, you should be taking creatine. Its effects are not dramatic, but you will notice within the first week or so that you're a bit stronger in the gym. And then, of course, you can leverage that strength to make to progress better. So, the stronger when you can get more reps now, you'll notice that, like, you have strength, which is pure power, and then you also have muscle endurance. You'll notice, especially if you're doing some higher rep, because then that's more we get into the anaerobic range. But the stronger you are, the faster you can add weight to the bar, the faster you can progress, the faster you can build muscle. So there's that element, and then there also are other mechanisms whereby creatine directly augments muscle growth. So you should be taking creatine. In terms of forms, creatine monohydrate is just the proven winner. That's what the majority of the studies have been done on. There are other forms like ethyl ester that just don't work. That's an example of one that is just not as effective as monohydrate. And then there are some forms that are more water soluble, like creatine hydrochloride, which, there's creatine malate, there's creatine citrate. Those are all fine. The only reason to go for one of those type of products is if creatine upsets your stomach. Some people, it makes them gassy. Some people, it causes just GI disturbances. So if that's the case, in some cases, unfortunately, even switching to a more water-soluble form doesn't do anything. It's just some people's bodies just don't like creatine when supplemented like that. Obviously, you're going to get creatine. You can get it from your diet. If you eat a big steak, you're going to get a few grams of creatine. But I personally wouldn't eat a big steak every day necessarily. I'm not afraid of meat and the whole meat cancer thing, which if you want to learn more about that, again, go to Examine or Google for Examine. What they've written a few articles on it, and they've really broken down the research that has been used to kind of sensationalize this whole meat is going to kill you thing. But I do limit my red meat intake just to kind of play it safe. I'll eat red meat maybe once or twice a week, but I eat a lot more chicken and turkey and sometimes fish. I'm not a huge fish fan, but I do like some fish. Unfortunately, the fish that I tend to like are high in contaminants and pollutants, where you're just not supposed to eat more than a few servings per week. So that's just the way it is. Anyway, so with creatine and body composition, it's basically all pros and no cons. It's not bad for your kidneys. You don't have to cycle it. It's not a steroid. Bloating is usually not an issue. Most people don't run into that. That was kind of a thing. Now that creatine processing has improved, some people still do find they get bloated with it, but most people don't have that problem. It doesn't necessarily cause baldness. You've probably heard that. There is one study, maybe two, that showed that it can increase dihydrogen testosterone, DHT levels, which if in men that have male pattern baldness, higher DHT is a problem and can accelerate hair loss. So if that's you, then maybe it's better, if you're really worried about that, then it'd be better, I'd say, don't use creatine, and we'll see as more research is done. Was this an anomaly, or is this actually a thing? What's this mechanism? How does this work? Is there something we can do about it? So yeah, it's just a very safe, it's an effective supplement. It's not very expensive, and it doesn't shut down production like drugs do. Your body will naturally produce less creatine when you're supplementing, but research shows that once you stop supplementing, your body just comes back up and brings its production back to where it needs to be. So yeah, creatine is good. I do recommend it, and it's in my post-workout supplement called Recharge. If you're interested in what I take, that's what I take. 5 grams of creatine monohydrate, and actually we're switching to a blend of creatines that are more water soluble, simply because we hear from customers every once in a while that do run into GI issues, and then we have to tell them, sorry, here, go find one of these more water soluble forms that are equally effective to monohydrate. And the mixability of monohydrate is not that great, so we finally were just like, why don't we just ourselves just use more water soluble form? It's slightly more expensive, but whatever. It just makes it a better product. So that'll be coming in the next probably 3 months or so. Most people don't have an issue. So it's kind of, we're always just looking to tweak things. How can we make this a little bit better? For each of our products, are there, okay, so as we're growing, we have these economies of scale. What can we do? Can we switch to, like in the case of our multivitamin, we're switching to a patented standardized form of our garlic extract, because we want to make sure that their allicin levels are at a certain level, or we're switching to a better form of B5, for instance. So we're always looking at ways we can improve, and in the case of recharging creatine, that's how we're doing it. There are a couple other ingredients actually I'm looking at adding, but unfortunately so far they taste so bad. It's just and I know I've said this before, we're trying it with Pulse too. Like, I would love to get Alcar in Pulse, because it's a good cognitive enhancer, but it tastes so bad. It makes Pulse, which in my opinion tastes pretty good right now. You take any flavor and you add Alcar, which I think it's 2.5 grams is what you need, somewhere between 2 and 3 grams. And it goes from tasting like pretty good, if you take Pulse, you know how it tastes, to tasting like detergent, like straight detergent. So if you like I really like green apple Pulse. So it goes from like, ooh, that's good green apple candy drink, to that's a green apple detergent mix. It's just gross. So anyways, that's it on creatine. Pretty simple. And the next supplement that I recommend and that I take is beta-alanine, which is amino acid. Now, when you supplement with beta-alanine, it increases the muscular levels of a molecule called carnosine, which your body combines with beta-alanine. It makes it from an amino acid called L-histidine, and it combines that with beta-alanine to form carnosine, and then that carnosine is found in muscle tissue. Now, what carnosine does is it acts as a buffer in the muscle against lactic acid buildup, which that's one of the reasons why, and you know that when you are especially doing higher rep stuff, that burn you're feeling is lactic acid buildup, and that is one of the ways that muscles fatigue and they finally give out and you can't do anymore. So carnosine helps you do more before you hit that point of too much lactic acid buildup, fully fatigued muscle failure. So that's why studies have shown that beta-alanine supplementation is particularly good for higher rep, more endurance type stuff, like you'd say CrossFit type stuff. But there's also research that shows that it can directly augment muscle growth, similar to creatine, separate from any performance benefits that you would see in the gym. So that's why many people take both creatine and beta-alanine, because creatine particularly helps with the lower rep with the power stuff, and beta-alanine particularly helps with the higher rep stuff, and both of them help you build muscle faster. So there's a good synergy there. And sometimes you'll find both in pre-workout supplements. And the reason why I didn't put creatine in my pre-workout supplement is because there's research that shows, one, that ingesting creatine with caffeine can interfere with creatine's effects. There's also research that shows that it doesn't. We just don't really know. And then there's research that too shows that creatine is more effective when taken post-workout. And we also know that when taken with carbs, it gets shuttled into the muscles more effectively. So in my opinion, creatine is just an all-around better post-workout supplement. So you have beta-alanine, which again, similar to creatine, it accumulates in the body, or it accumulates carnosine in the case of beta-alanine. As you take it every day, your carnosine levels are rising, and when you supplement with creatine, your muscle creatine levels rise. That's why you usually don't notice effects with either one of them for the first week or so, unless you are loading, which you've probably heard that in the context of creatine, where you take 20 grams a day instead of 5. In the big picture, it doesn't matter whether you load or not. If you do load, it's going to accumulate in your muscles faster, and you're going to notice the effects sooner. The downside is you're going to burn through that first bottle faster. But once you've loaded, then you just go to 5 grams a day, and you're good to go. Beta-alanine also is about 5 grams. You want 4 to 5 grams a day, and carnosine levels then rise, and then you start noticing a difference in your training. That's everything. I know this went on a bit long. Hopefully you found it helpful. And again, just kind of the key takeaway here is that supplements don't build great physiques. You have to know what you're doing with your diet, and you have to know what you're doing in the gym, and you have to be persistent, and you have to work hard and work for a long period of time if you really want to dramatically transform your physique. If you have money to spend on supplements, the right supplements can help, can make it, in some cases, make it more enjoyable, like a pre-workout, in my opinion. A good pre-workout makes for better workouts, not just in performance, but also in how you experience them. I enjoy my workouts more when I've taken Pulse, because I just feel better. I have more energy, and I'm able to get a bit more, push a bit more on my weights, and so that makes it worth it to me. But you don't need supplements to build the body you want. They are supplements. They're not vital. So I hope you found this helpful. And again, if you want to check out what supplements I'm taking, obviously I just take my own stuff, because that's even how I develop products. That's how each of the products I've developed, and it's not just me. I have a team of people I work with, but it's been, okay, really, what do I wish there was a multivitamin that I actually wanted to take and that actually impressed me. All right, let's make that. I wish there was a post-workout supplement that didn't have a bunch of crap that does nothing. I don't want to pay for glutamine or other things that aren't HMB and stuff that isn't going to do anything. I just want to pay for a few things that are actually going to help, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to learn more about that and learn what I'm taking and the kind of stuff that I make and use, then go to Legion, Legion, athletics.com. There it is. All right, see you next week.